Good evening, everybody. This is Robin with another edition of Horror Pop After Midnight. And my guest tonight is Dan Farr. He's the founder of the Fan conventions. How's it going, Dan?
Hey, thank you for having me on. I'm glad to be here with you. Doing well.
Oh, that's good. I'm so excited for this weekend for the Indiana Comic Con in Indianapolis. It will be my first convention, which is under Fan X.
Oh, yeah. Well, we've had two other conventions there. So this will be the third one we've run in Indianapolis, which is nice because the fans there are fantastic. And that's a great city. A lot of people that love pop culture. So, we did the first year just was 2 years ago in October, right after the pandemic. So it was October 21. And then in 22, we did it, I think it was April 15th, May 15th, I believe. And then obviously we're here again this year.
So, what got you in to doing, comic conventions?
Oh, I'll tell you, that's a great question. I was a vendor for like the Wizard World conventions for a couple of years with my 3D software business. And as I did that, I was really pulled in and drawn into the fan excitement of those events. I would attend as a vendor with the 3D software because people would use it for creating, or illustrating things. And we even had some comic book creators that had used that for illustration. But what I did is when I went to them, I actually fell in love with the fans. I love the cosplay. I love the fan excitement when they would meet celebrities and just have a good time. And so I was captured by that energy. And in Utah, we didn't have anything like that. We had some smaller, we had a small anime convention and we had a few other things once in a while, but nothing big. And so in 2012, I had left my 3D software business. And so 2013, we did our first event in Salt Lake City, which we're now 10 years anniversary of this year. And so that show just took on, just really took off in a big way. We started off anticipating the show with 10 to 15,000 attendees. And by the time the show came around, it blew up to the point where we had about 70,000 people attend. So it was gigantic.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah, and what it shows you is the power of pop culture and fandom. I'm a fan of fans. I love fan energy. It is something that I have really taken to because I didn't really understand fandom to the level that I've been able to over the last 10, 15 years. I realized that my wife is actually a fangirl. She enjoys pop culture. 15 years ago or so, she said, "Hey, I want to do a Star Wars Christmas tree for Christmas this year." And I'm like, that's interesting. Sure, go ahead, And I didn't really understand it. And then when I started going to these conventions, I started to really get a grasp on fandom and the power and the energy behind that. And was drawn into it myself. So I love, and by the way, I've always loved Star Wars. So it's not like I wasn't a Star Wars fan, but I just wasn't like a Star Wars super fan. I never would have thought of doing a Star Wars Christmas tree, but my wife being the fangirl that she is, she helped me understand a lot about fanatic fandoms, people just really getting enthusiastic about whatever pop aspect of pop culture it is, how enthusiastic fans become about it.
So, do you have yourself your own Star Wars T-shirt you like to wear?
If I do have some Star Wars T-shirts, I have a Ahsoka one that Daniel Logan gave me. So I do have that one. And I have some other ones that my wife had given me, some Han Solo ones. She's a big Han Solo fan. And so I've had those throughout the years. But I've never been one to go out and pick out my own T-shirts. I always leave it up to her, and I'm always thrilled with what she gets me. But I I was, and it's interesting you bring up the T-shirt aspect. Is I kind of, as I would explain to people about fandom, because there are some people that really don't have what I call the fan gene.
Yeah.
And they don't get as excited about things like this. And so I would explain to people, I say, you know what, when you go out and you buy a T-shirt for Star Wars or, Star Trek or Harry Potter or something like that, when you're actually going out and buying those T-shirts, then you fall into that category of a super fan, because, there's a lot of people that don't think along those lines. They don't think, well, I really like this TV show or this movie or this video game or whatever it may be. Therefore, I want to go buy a T-shirt for it. Or even you think of like the band, a band's coming in town. People want to get a concert T-shirt. It's kind of, I think that T-shirt level is the delineator for me of when you become a fan, is when you want to go out and buy a T-shirt that represents your fandom that you like.
Yeah, so how much fun do you have running your conventions and all that? Do you like geek out hard while you're running these popular pop culture conventions?
In a huge way, I really do. I and like I kind of mentioned, being a fan of the fans, I live a vicarious life through the fans in a lot of ways, where I'll sit and I'll try to watch them meet a celebrity that they want to meet and see them, get tongue-tied or just have this giant smile and this great excitement when they get to meet a celebrity or a comic book artist or somebody that they've really looked up to. And I live that experience vicariously through them, because like I said, I kind of fall into the category of, I don't know that I ever would have bought a pop culture T-shirt if it wasn't for my wife. And so I really get a thrill vicariously watching that happen. And it is, to me, the energy that comes together when these elements really, these elements of these shows come together. It is so powerful. And I would describe it before I did our Salt Lake show for the first time, people would say, well, what is it? And I said, well, sometimes it's really hard to describe unless you actually go to these conventions. But I will say this, is the energy there is like you can cut it with a knife. And so even as not being a super fanboy myself, I still felt the energy as I attended these different conventions. And so when we put these together in Salt Lake and now in Indianapolis and Tampa and Atlanta, we've been able to really bring that energy together. We do look at the celebrity guests as a big part of it, but that's absolutely not everything that's available at these events. I think one thing that has come in stronger for me for the events is to realize what the local fans bring to the convention. They actually become, when people come in cosplay, they become part of the entertainment. The costumes that people bring to the event are usually so exciting that if they're doing a really good cosplay, they won't get to see the event. They're just going to be stopped to do photos the whole time. And so that's the thing, that's just another element. And then obviously the comic book creators that are there, the artists and vendors and everything. There's just so much with these events, in addition to having a lot of, great programming to discuss pop culture topics. There's really just so much available in these events.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing. There's so many good ones out there of all the conventions. Have you ever thought about doing a horror convention?
Absolutely. Now, it's interesting you had asked that, because now one thing I got caught up in is I started doing a big home Halloween haunt.
Okay.
So I loved doing, I became a home haunter and nerded out on that. And so and people would say to me, man, you must be a really big Halloween fan. And I'd say, well, you know what? I'm actually a fan of entertaining people. That's what I love about Halloween, and scaring people, getting them excited, and they're laughing and having a good time. So I started that before I did Fan X in Salt Lake. But it was kind of they're so closely related. And so with the horror stuff, I love the way that horror and scaring people and everything that it's so powerful. And so, as far as doing a horror convention, absolutely into looking at doing something along those lines. We do try to integrate horror into our shows. So we generally try to get a few horror guests when we can. Obviously, a Walking Dead, that's kind of a lowest common denominator. But when we can get Robert Englund or Kane Hodder and some of the other people, Linda Blair, we've had at some shows. We've had a lot of really fun horror guests as well. I love that personally.
Oh, I do too. So when you first started Fan X, what was going through your mind, and who was the very first guest you booked?
Lou Ferrigno was the first guest that we had, and part of it was that I got to know Lou a little bit. So actually, Lou Ferrigno and Kevin Sorbo, those two. I'd met them at some Wizard shows, and we had talked to them about doing a show in Salt Lake, and both of them were open to it. And so that's really where we kind of got the ball rolling. And then, that same year we ended up as we got closer to the convention, we were able to get in William Shatner, and also we got Stan Lee. We really ended up with a really fun pop culture lineup for that show.
Yes, I was glad I got to meet Stan Lee too. It's a shame he's gone now, but he was such a great person to meet. I mean, he was very, genuine, nice to all of his fans. He took his time to, say, hey, thank you for coming. Like how you go through most conventions, they just rush you through.
Yeah, so sometimes, you don't get that experience, and it really means a lot when a celebrity will take that extra moment with you and just make you feel validated. That's always nice.
Yeah, so of all the guests you booked all these years, who was your favorite guest and memorable moment that you really geeked out on?
Wow, that's a hard one, because I'll say this is the guests that I get the most excited about booking are the ones that I know will have the biggest impact on the fans. Mm-hmm. And so, like Chris Evans when we've had him at shows, or Tom Holland and things like that. I just know that there's a large number of fans that will really be impacted by that. But one thing that's kind of changed for me is I realized that every single guest has their group of fans that, maybe they're not the giant household name, but they have a group of fans that will, for them, it's just like meeting Stan Lee. Yeah. It's like they get to meet somebody to them that means so much in so many ways. I guess, I've kind of danced around your question, but what I say is that there's been some elements in almost every guest that we've had that I've kind of geeked out about, especially when they're guests that take a minute with the fans. And voice actors, to me, that's been one of the kind of the bigger surprises. I'd say the first couple conventions, I didn't really understand how big of a deal voice actors, or let's say characters, Peter Mayhew in the Chewbacca costume. To me, it's like, well, Chewbacca's the character, not Peter Mayhew. But what I realize now is when fandom comes together and gets excited, Peter Mayhew was Chewbacca. And, I think a lot of ways when fans come to these conventions, they really know that William Shatner is not James T. Kirk. They know that, he's playing a character of James T. Kirk. I think in part of the enjoyment of the experience, they allow themselves to, their creativity, their imagination, they allow themselves to kind of, in a way, still believe that they are meeting James T. Kirk. And I think Peter Mayhew, they are meeting Chewbacca. And, I think that's something for me, that's that powerful fan magic that happens.
I think so too. And then what you mentioned earlier about the fans, do you ever go out on the floor in your shows just to sink it all in and enjoy all the fandom with all the different people?
Always. No, that's the best part. That's my favorite part of the shows. I love, I mean, the mechanics of the show have to happen. That stuff needs to take place. You need to make sure that the wheels are staying on the bus. But my favorite part is to be able to go out and just observe fans having a good time and seeing families together or good friends or people connecting in a way. I had an opportunity to speak at an award ceremony over the weekend. Mm-hmm. We're talking about just the fan energy and how really fandom itself has its origins in the creative stories behind it. So you think of just the creativity that, Star Wars, for example, coming from George Lucas, that point, he's the originator of that idea that has become this amazing universe, that so many people are moved by and motivated by and excited by, all that energy just from the concept of an idea.
Yeah. Also, have you ever thought about cosplaying as a character?
I did. I mentioned voice actors before. We've had Jess Harnell, who we did have him in Indianapolis last year. He's the voice of Wacko and Animaniacs, and he's got 1,000 other character voices he's done over the years. We do a panel called Twisted Tunes, and so one year I dressed up like Jess Harnell. If you've seen Jess, he's got long. He looks like an '80s rock star.
Yeah, he has the long hair, the rocker hair. Yeah.
Yeah, in glitter and like sequin jackets and tight pants, spandex tight pants, with the bell bottoms and everything, and it really, he's somebody that makes a statement wherever he goes, just by how he looks. And so I cosplayed him. One of the times that he was supposed to come out of the panel, it was me coming out, and I had a wig and jacket and pants and everything, and I was out there holding the microphone, and he was in the back doing the voice, but I had the microphone up to my mouth to pretend that I was him for a few minutes. I think people were looking there a little bit puzzled. At first they're like, "Yeah, Jess, wait, what's going on?" What happened to Jess? Yeah.
So, when you go out and observe, fandoms at your shows and all that, have you ever walked up to any of the convention goers or heard any memorable stories? Why did they come to these conventions?
Well, let's see. I mean, I am, I do have lots of stories that mean a lot to me that I hear from fans. Sometimes it's, just coming in to meet somebody they've looked up to all their life, and chance to meet them. It's a really big deal. Or many times there's the nostalgia of having a loved one that's no longer with them, and having the opportunity to meet somebody that the person that's gone on, and they would enjoy, watching their shows or were fans of them. But one story in particular that's kind of fun is I have somebody that I met after our first year or two, and he told me a story about how he takes his daughter with him, and he'll spend months making costumes so they can go as kind of a pair, and so he'll make this cosplay, and by the way, he's an educator, so he's a person that's, he's in the school district and, basically background educator. And so he takes this time and has connected with his daughter in such a way that she and they have this special thing every time they go. And he was driving home from one of the conventions, and she said to him, she says, Dad, if I had somebody ask if they could go to Fan X with me, I would tell them, I said, sure, you can go as long as you're willing to go with me and my dad. because it's our thing. And, just the power of that connection. And, not to mention that this guy's daughter is, she's kind of shy and more very, very introverted. But when she goes in cosplay, she's able to be with people like herself, and she feels, she believes, or when she goes there, she feels like she's in a safe environment and is outgoing. He says that it's interesting to kind of see the way she'll open up, where normally she's kind of a closed individual, for her to open up in a big way when she's cosplaying.
That's a cool story. That kind of gives me a little tear in my eye.
Yeah, it really does.
Yeah, I'm the same way too. I do a lot of conventions, but sometimes my younger brother comes with me too, and I like it how we bond and do these. He doesn't go with me all the time, but when it does, we just have that special bond where we just go and just enjoy a great show, great atmosphere, and great people. So, how did you come up with the name Fan X? Is there like a story to that?
There is, yeah. Our first event, I mentioned to you that we went into it expecting 10 to 15,000 attendees and ended up around 70.
Yeah.
And with that, as you can imagine, brought a lot of, we had to move convention center. So we had a plan at one convention center and had to move it to the downtown convention center because to be able to manage that that amount of people. But even then, we still had people waiting in line 2 to 3 hours to get into the convention. And so with it being our very first convention, we wanted to do something. We decided we were going to do 2 shows a year. So we were going to do a spring show because this was in the fall.
Yeah.
We wanted to be able to differentiate somewhat from the fall convention. And so we came up with the name Fan X, but what it meant is fan experience.
Okay.
And really, not only was it a name, but for us as a staff, it became a mission statement because we were going to figure out how to get people out of 2-hour lines. You know, we didn't want that to happen again. We did not want to have some of the, the bumps and bruises you have when you do a convention for the first time, especially at that size.
Yeah.
We didn't want to repeat that again. And so fan experience for us is, or was and is and continues to be a mission statement to make sure that the fan experience is the number one thing. And even though we haven't taken the name Fan Experience and applied it to Indianapolis, it is still for us, that's still the mission statement, to focus on the fan experience.
Yeah, I like that. And before you came on the show, we were talking. Fan X Salt Lake City is on my bucket list of conventions to go to because I go to a lot all over and stuff, and that's my next goal is to come out to Utah and check out the Fan X, the one.
I'd love to have you do that.
Yeah, because
that would be fun.
Yeah, I have a friend that
we'd love to have you.
Yeah, I have a friend that doesn't live too far from there, and she's always telling me, she's like, Robin, you just got to go. This is a fun show. And she goes, I know you do a lot of shows, but you got to have the Fan X experience. And I go, I know, it's going to happen.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad the reputation's out there. And obviously that is really important for us for other shows we're involved in. We want to make sure that quality and reputation that we've spent 10 years building will be visible with anybody that attends any of our shows. I will say this is that Imaginarium, who owned the Indianapolis show before we did, was a great company, and they focused on putting on great events as well. So it wasn't like we came in, we felt like, we've got to rebuild this thing from the ground up, because it had really the underpinnings of everything that we felt was important. I think we have brought some things that will help improve that experience, but it is, we definitely see it at the same quality level as we do in our Salt Lake show.
Yeah, I'm so excited for Indianapolis show this Saturday because you guys are getting Grant Gustin, the Flash, and this guy hardly ever does any conventions. And I know the final season's wrapped up, but you can still watch the final season. it just surprised me you got him, because he's that type of person, that really didn't want to do shows. How'd you pull that out of your hat?
Well, it's interesting because I had been working early on to try to get Grant and for the Salt Lake show before we had these other shows, and have built some relationships. But I think he was very aware of our reputation, and whenever we had people from Arrow or the Flash come to Salt Lake, they were very well treated. And in fact, many of them, they come once and they want to be back to the show again. And we unfortunately we have to keep the lineup rotating, so we can't bring people back to back all the time. And, but the reputation that we had there had preceded us, but then that led into Indianapolis, because they know that we as promoters, as a company that runs this, we're going to do our best to make sure that the talent will have a good experience, and they know that we run the fan experience, make sure the fans are taken care of. That, because one thing that the talent does not want to do is they don't want to go to a show and have it fall apart and look bad on them. They want to make sure that they can go there and just focus on taking care of the fans. If Grant or Charlie or Tim or anybody that's going to be at our show, if they can go and know that we'll take care of all the stuff behind the scenes, and all they need to do is go out and put on the smile and be friendly and enjoy their experiences meeting their fans, that's what works for them, and that's what they want.
Yeah, that was pretty good, because you got a good lineup. I mean, I've met most of the people on your lineup, but it's one a hell of a good lineup. I mean, you guys threw your guns out there, but when I saw Grant, and I don't live too far from Indianapolis. I live like outside of Cincinnati, which is only an hour and a half drive. But when I found out about Grant, it's like, because I cover, conventions all the time, because I always get press passes. And when I found out about Grant, I was like, dude, this is worth going. And I have a feeling your show's going to be like super packed because of Grant. I mean, he's like a big deal to a lot of fans out there.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, we were excited to get him. We felt like that. Well, the thing is, we were already pretty excited. We had Charlie Hunnam that wanted to come. Yeah,
great guy. I met him. Genuine guy.
So nice.
Yeah.
Very, very nice. Yeah. And, Adam Savage, same thing. Adam Savage wanted to come. Mm-hmm. Kari Payton, Ron Perlman, what's interesting is we do have a lot of people that will come to us to get into our shows. Because, I'll say this, is we work really hard to make sure that the celebrities are very well taken care of, because we know that if they come in and let's say that everything works smoothly and they're put into a hotel and they've got their needs taken care of, and they don't need to worry about if somebody's going to pick them up at the airport or if they're going to have a meal on time or whatever, if they know that we take care of that, then it puts them in a better mood, that therefore they're being able to turn out all the good energy towards their fans. And so I think, our reputation of taking care of the celebrities has been really, really strong, and we take care of them and then they take care of the fans.
That's pretty good. So where can everybody find you guys on social media if they want to check out your shows?
Well, I think if they just, Google, like on Facebook or wherever, the best thing is just to Google Indiana Comic Convention. And you do that, and, IndianaComicConvention.com gets you to the website. And then you could also, Indiana Comic Convention Facebook, and Google that, and it'll get you the exact URL or the link to it.
All right. Thank you so much for coming on and sharing your story.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate you giving me the time, and look forward to meeting you on Saturday.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it, because I'm going to be looking for you.
Yeah, please do. And ask around. Let's make sure we meet up. I'd love to.
I'll definitely do that. It's going to be a blast, and we'll get a picture together too. So
let's do it. That's
all
great.
Right. And everybody, thank you for listening to Horror Pop After Midnight.